Corporal Kim Tae-young stood in the docking bay of the GCS Unity, watching aliens move around him like he was seeing a dream. 3 months ago, he was a regular Marine stationed on Earth. Now, he was part of history, the first human military personnel assigned to a Galactic Council vessel. The ship was massive. It stretched for almost 2 kilometers, built by 17 different species working together. The walls glowed with soft blue light. The air smelled strange, like flowers mixed with metal. Tae-young adjusted his uniform and walked down the corridor, trying not to stare at the creatures passing by. A mantis-like being, tall and green with 4 arms, stopped in front of him. Its large eyes focused on Tae-young with obvious curiosity. "You must be the human Marine," it said through a translator device on its chest. "I am Navigator Dren. Welcome aboard the Unity." Tae-young saluted out of habit. Dren tilted its triangular head, confused by the gesture. "Is that a greeting ritual?" "Yes, sir. A military one." "Military." Dren repeated the word slowly. "How fascinating. We have heard humans still maintain armed forces. Is it true you trained specifically for combat?" "Yes, sir. That's what Marines do." Dren made a chittering sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "How wonderfully primitive. But do not worry, young Tae-young. You will find no need for such skills here. The galaxy has been at peace for 3,000 years. Before Tae-young could respond, Dren walked away, its legs clicking on the metal floor. The corporal stood there, feeling oddly dismissed. He had trained for 6 years to become a Marine. He had survived conflicts on Earth that almost ended human civilization. But to these aliens, he was just a quaint reminder of a violent past. Captain Hyundae-ho found him an hour later. The captain was in his 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He was one of the first humans to meet the Galactic Council 5 years ago. "Corporal Kim, good to see you made it. How are you settling in?" "Still getting used to it, sir." "It's all very different." "That it is," Hyun said, looking around at the alien crew moving through the corridors. "These people have forgotten what conflict looks like. They think we're strange for remembering." "Navigator Dren called our training primitive, sir." Hyun smiled without humor. "They all do. Come on. There's a diplomatic dinner tonight. Ambassador Park wants all human personnel present. We need to make a good impression." The dining hall was enormous. Tables floated in the air, held up by some technology Tae-young didn't understand. Dozens of alien species gathered, talking in languages the translators worked hard to interpret. Ambassador Park Mire stood near the center, a small woman with a commanding presence. She had spent the last 5 years trying to integrate humanity into galactic society. Tae-young sat at a table with several Valkyr, the mantis-like species that Dren belonged to. Next to him was a Quellan, a 4-armed being covered in soft gray fur. Its name was Elder Thane, and it seemed very old and very wise. "Tell me, young human," Thane said in a gentle voice, "is it true your species still has conflicts among yourselves?" "We had a big war 20 years ago," Tae-young admitted, "but we've been working on peace since then." The aliens at the table exchanged looks. One Valkyr made that chittering laugh sound again. "A war only 20 years ago? My goodness. We haven't had genuine warfare in our sector for 3 millennia. How do you prevent it?" Tae-young asked, genuinely curious. "Prevent it?" Thane seemed confused. "We simply don't engage in such behavior. When conflicts arise, we discuss them. We negotiate. We find peaceful solutions. But what if someone doesn't want to negotiate?" The table fell silent. The aliens looked at each other, then back at Tae-young. "Why wouldn't they?" another Valkyr asked. "Violence serves no purpose. It destroys resources. It causes suffering. Any rational being would choose peace." Tae-young thought about the warlords he had fought on Earth, the fanatics who wanted to destroy entire cities, the people who believed their cause was worth any amount of death. He wondered how to explain that not everyone was rational. Ambassador Park stood and raised her glass. To new friendships, she said. To humanity, learning from the Galactic Council's example of peace. Everyone drank. Taeyang noticed the captain watching him from across the room. Hyun's expression was hard to read. After dinner, a young Velkir named Voss approached Taeyang. Voss worked as a technician on the ship. I have been curious about human military structure, Voss said. May I ask questions? Voss. Sure, Taeyang said. You wear a uniform. You have ranks. You train in combat. But there is no one to fight. Does this not seem wasteful? We're one then. Taeyang chose his words carefully. We train, so we're ready if something happens. It's better to have the skills and not need them, than to need them and not have them. But nothing will happen, Voss said with certainty. The galaxy is peaceful. Pirates are rare and poorly organized. Major conflicts are ancient history. Your training is for a threat that no longer exists. Maybe, Taeyang said. But I still sleep better, knowing I'm prepared. Voss made a thoughtful humming sound. Humans are very anxious creatures. This must be difficult for you, living with such fear. It wasn't fear, Taeyang wanted to say. It was readiness. It was responsibility. But he didn't know how to explain that to someone who had never faced a real threat. He walked the ship's corridors later that night, unable to sleep. The Unity had no weapons beyond basic mining lasers, no security checkpoints, no armed guards. The aliens didn't even lock their doors. They lived in a state of trust that seemed impossible to Taeyang. He found Captain Hyun on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. Can't sleep either? The captain asked. No, sir. It feels wrong. No defenses. No protocols. They're completely vulnerable. They don't see it that way, Hyun said. To them, we're the strange ones. We're the ones who see threats everywhere. Are they right? Hyun was quiet for a long moment. I've been thinking about that for 5 years, Corporal. Maybe they are. Maybe we're carrying baggage from our violent history that we don't need anymore. Or maybe they've forgotten what the universe can really be like. The captain looked at him sharply. Then he nodded slowly. Maybe. Time will tell. That's when the alarm started. A soft chime at first, then growing louder. Red lights began flashing along the corridor. Taeyang's training kicked in immediately, his body tensed, ready to move. What's happening? He asked. Hyun pulled up a display on the wall. His face went pale. Unknown vessel. Approaching fast. Not responding to hails. They ran to the bridge. Alien crew members moved in confused, frightened patterns. No one seemed to know what to do. Navigator Dren was trying to hail the approaching ship, but getting only silence in response. Distance? Captain Hyun demanded. 5,000 kilometers and closing, Dren said, voice shaking. Captain, our protocols say we should offer assistance. Perhaps their communications are damaged. Or perhaps they don't want to talk, Taeyang muttered. The ship appeared on the view screen. It was dark and angular, covered in scorch marks and crude repairs. It looked nothing like the smooth, elegant council vessels. Ambassador Park rushed onto the bridge. What's our situation? Unknown, Hyun said. But I don't like it. Corporal, get the other Marines. Full gear. Defensive positions. Sir, is that necessary? Dren asked. We should try diplomatic. The ship fired. A bright lance of energy struck the Unity's shields. Alarms screamed. The deck shook. The age of peace, Taeyang realized as he ran for the armory, was over. The Unity shook again as another blast struck its shields. Taeyang sprinted through corridors filled with panicking aliens. They pressed against walls, frozen in fear, making strange sounds of distress. He had never seen anything like it. On Earth, even civilians knew to run or hide during an attack. These beings just stood there, overwhelmed. He reached the armory where the other 7 Marines were already gearing up. Lieutenant Choi Bonhua was checking her rifle, her face calm and focused. "Corporal, what's the situation?" "Unknown, hostile, already firing on us. The aliens don't know what to do." "Of course they don't," Bonhua said. She pulled on her helmet. "All right, listen up. Standard defense protocol. Teams of 2. Protect the engineering sections and the bridge. Rules of engagement are strict. We are guests on this ship. We defend only." "Clear?" "Clear, ma'am," Taeyang and the others responded. They split up and moved through the ship. Taeyang was paired with Private Lee Jiwoo, a young Marine on her first space assignment. Her hands shook slightly as she held her weapon. "You good?" Taeyang asked. "Yeah. Just weird. You know, we trained for combat on Earth. Didn't think we'd actually need it out here." They took position near a major corridor junction. Through the ship's systems, they could hear Captain Hyun trying to communicate with the attacking vessel. "This is the GCS Unity, a Galactic Council science vessel. We mean you no harm. Please identify yourself and state your intentions." No response. Just another weapons blast. On the bridge, Navigator Dren was in a state near panic. Dr. Yoon Ha-jin, the human xenobiologist, watched the aliens' behavior with clinical interest. Even in this crisis, his scientific mind was working. "Fascinating," he muttered. Complete psychological breakdown in the face of violence. No fight or flight response. Just freezing. "Now is not the time, Doctor," Captain Hyun said sharply. "Actually, Captain, it's exactly the time. If we survive this, we need to understand why the Council species are so vulnerable." Ambassador Park was trying to coordinate with the Council, but communications were jammed. "They're blocking all frequencies," she said. "We're on our own." The attacking ship moved closer. On the view screen, they could finally see details. It was a patchwork vessel, built from pieces of different ships. Weapons had been bolted onto every available surface. It looked like something from humanity's own pirate age centuries ago. "They're preparing to board," Dren said, voice barely a whisper. "What do we do? We have no weapons, no security forces. Our protocols don't cover this." Hyun looked at Ambassador Park. She nodded. "Release human Marines for active defense. Full authorization. All Marine units," Hyun said into the ship-wide channel. "You are cleared to engage hostiles. Protect the crew." Taeyang heard the authorization through his helmet. His body relaxed into training. This, he knew. This, he understood. The boarding pods hit the Unity's hull with metallic clangs, 3 of them attaching like parasites. Cutting torches began burning through the outer doors. Alien crew members near the breach points scattered in terror. "Get them back," Taeyang told a group of Velkir engineers. They just stared at him. "Move. Now. Get to the safe areas." His command voice cut through their panic. They ran. The first hull breach opened. Pirates poured through. A mix of species Taeyang didn't recognize. They wore mismatched armor and carried crude but effective weapons. They saw the corridor full of expensive equipment and vulnerable aliens, and they cheered. Then they saw Taeyang and Jiwoo. The Marines had taken cover behind support pillars. Their weapons were modern, Earth-made rifles, far more advanced than the pirates' gear. Taeyang activated his helmet speaker. "This is Corporal Kim Taeyang of the Earth Marines. Drop your weapons and surrender." The pirates laughed. One of them, a large creature with too many teeth, raised a weapon toward him. Taeyang fired. 3 rounds, center mass. The pirate went down. The others stopped laughing. I said, "Drop your weapons." What happened next would be analyzed for months by Council psychologists. The pirates, who moments before were confident attackers, suddenly faced trained human soldiers. They tried to fight back. They didn't understand what they were facing. Taeyang and Jiwoo moved like they had trained to move. Smooth, efficient, controlled. Each shot was aimed. Each action had purpose. The pirates scattered, disorganized and confused. Elsewhere on the ship, the other Marine teams were having similar success. Lieutenant Bonnois' team eliminated an entire boarding party in under 2 minutes. The pirates had numbers but no discipline, no tactics, no real training. On the bridge, the aliens watched through security cameras. They saw humans moving through corridors with frightening efficiency. They saw violence controlled and directed with precision. It was like watching predators hunt. By the ancestors, Dren whispered. What are they? Dr. Yoon was recording everything. They're soldiers. Real soldiers. Within 15 minutes, all 3 boarding parties were neutralized. The Marines had suffered no casualties. They had taken 12 pirates alive, wounded, but stable. Another 8 were dead. Taeyang secured his prisoners with plastic restraints, treating their wounds with basic first aid. Technician Voss approached slowly, staring at the captured pirates. Then, at Taeyang. You defeated them. Yes, you killed some of them. I did. Voss looked at the prisoners. But these ones surrendered, and you stopped shooting. Taeyang checked a pirate's bandage, making sure it was secure. Because they surrendered. Once they're no longer a threat, you don't keep shooting. That's the rule. Rule? Voss's translator struggled with the concept. You have rules for violence? Of course. You can't just do whatever you want in combat. There are laws, agreements. But you were fighting for your life. Why would rules matter? Taeyang stood, looking at the confused alien. Because we're not animals. We're soldiers. There's a difference. The attacking ship tried to flee once their boarding parties were defeated. Captain Hyun wanted to let them go, but Ambassador Park overruled him. If they escape, they'll just attack someone else. We need to disable them. The Unity's mining lasers weren't designed for combat, but Lieutenant Bonnois managed to target the pirate ship's engines. The vessel went dead in space, drifting helplessly. Council security forces arrived 6 hours later. They were police, not military, and they seemed overwhelmed by the situation. Their leader, a Quellan named Senior Inspector Torin, walked through the Unity with visible distress. This is terrible, Torin said. Violence on this scale hasn't occurred in our sector for centuries. We have protocols for minor disputes, but we're not equipped. The humans handled it, Captain Hyun said. Torin looked at the human captain with an expression that might have been fear. Yes, we saw the recordings, how they moved, how they fought. It was very efficient. They saved the ship. I know. That's what troubles me. An emergency council meeting was called. All department heads and senior staff were required to attend. The conference room was packed with aliens, all talking in nervous, high-pitched voices. The 8 humans present stood quietly in one corner, waiting. Elder Thane called the meeting to order. The wise Quellan looked much older than before, worn down by shock. We must discuss what happened today. And more importantly, we must discuss what it revealed about our human colleagues. Ambassador Park stepped forward. The Marines acted in defense of this ship and crew. They followed proper. They killed 8 beings. A Velkir diplomat interrupted. 8 lives ended. Do you understand how monstrous that is to us? Those 8 beings were trying to kill you, Lieutenant Bonnois said coldly. You're welcome. By the way, the room erupted in argument, aliens shouting in different languages, translators struggling to keep up. Taeyang stood next to Jiwoo, watching the chaos. They're mad at us for saving them, Jiwoo muttered. This is insane. They're scared, Taeyang said. They just learned the universe isn't as safe as they thought. And they learned we're dangerous. 7. We're not dangerous. We're defenders. To them, there's no difference. Elder Thane finally restored order. He looked at the humans with something between curiosity and fear. Corporal Kim, he said. You told Technician Voss That you have rules for violence. Please explain this. We need to understand. Taeyang glanced at Captain Hyun, who nodded. The young corporal stepped forward, suddenly the center of attention for dozens of alien species. Where do I start? He asked. Start with why, Thane said. Why do you need rules for something that should never happen? Taeyang took a deep breath. This was going to be difficult. The conference room was silent now. Every alien eye was fixed on Corporal Kim Taeyang. He had fought pirates without breaking a sweat. But standing in front of this crowd made him nervous. Captain Hyun gave him an encouraging nod. Humans have been fighting each other for our entire history, Taeyang began. Wars, battles, conflicts. Small fights between tribes and big wars between nations. We've always had violence. A young Valkyr raised one of its four arms. We're still evolving, Taeyang said. But evolution is slow. Our instincts are still there. The urge to fight when threatened. The ability to see others as enemies. We can't just turn that off. Dr. Yoon stood up from the human section. If I may add some context, most council species evolved from prey animals or peaceful herbivores. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We tracked prey for days. We used tools to kill. It's built into our biology. The room filled with uncomfortable murmurs. Counselor An Sulgi, the human psychologist, stood next to Dr. Yoon. But we also evolved empathy and cooperation. We're not mindless predators. We're social creatures who happen to be very good at violence. Elder Thane raised a hand for silence. Continue, Corporal. Tell us about these rules. Taeyang organized his thoughts. About 400 years ago, Earth went through some terrible wars. Millions of people died. Entire cities destroyed. Weapons that could kill thousands in seconds. It was bad. Really bad. How did you stop? Asked Navigator Dren. We didn't. Not right away. But we learned. After each major war, we created new rules. Treaties. Laws about how war could be fought. Laws about war? Aquelan Elder looked confused. That's a contradiction. War is chaos. Law is order. They cannot coexist. They have to. Taeyang said firmly. Because if war has no rules, it becomes something worse than chaos. It becomes horror. He pulled up a display screen, showing a document. This is the Geneva Convention. One of our most important agreements about warfare. It was written after a particularly brutal war about 300 years ago. The aliens leaned forward, reading the translated text. Their expressions changed from curiosity to shock to horror. You had to make rules against torture? Dren's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. Against attacking hospitals? Against harming medical personnel? Yes. Against using poison gas? Biological weapons? Certain types of ammunition designed to cause unnecessary suffering? Yes to all of it. The room erupted. Aliens stood, shouting in distress. Some left the room entirely, too upset to continue. Technician Voss stared at the display screen like it was showing something obscene. You had to forbid these things, Voss said slowly. Because your people would do them otherwise? Some would, Taeyang admitted. Not everyone. Not most people. But enough that we needed clear rules saying it was wrong. Elder Thane held up a document on his own display. I have been researching human history since the attack. I have read about something called Unit 731. About experiments on living beings. About suffering inflicted deliberately for research purposes. The human delegation went quiet. Ambassador Park closed her eyes. That was a dark chapter in human history. Yes, she said quietly. That happened. It was a war crime. The people responsible were punished, but it happened at all, Thane said. Your species was capable of such things, is still capable. Any species is capable of terrible things under the right circumstances, Dr. Yoon said. The difference is, we know it. We remember it. We teach it in schools so it never happens again. A four-armed diplomat stood. You teach your children about these atrocities? End quote. And, yes. Counselor Ahn said. We teach them about the Holocaust. About slavery. About genocide and war crimes. And all the terrible things humans have done to each other. We teach them, so they'll never forget the cost of hatred. Private Lee Jiwoo spoke up from the back. My grandmother survived the last major war on Earth. She told me stories about what happened, about friends she lost, about cities that got destroyed. She told me these stories so I would understand why we have rules now. But the rules didn't prevent the war. A Valkyr pointed out. No. Jiwoo admitted. But they made it less terrible than it could have been. Both sides followed most of the laws of war. They treated prisoners humanely. They avoided attacking civilian targets when possible. Without those rules, everyone would have died. Lieutenant Choi Bonhwa pulled up another display. These are the rules of engagement for Earth's military forces. Every soldier memorizes them. We have rules about when we can shoot, how we can shoot, who we can shoot. We have entire courts dedicated to prosecuting soldiers who break these rules. You punish your own warriors for being too violent? Dren asked in disbelief. We punish them for being violent in the wrong ways, Bonhwa corrected. There's a difference between a soldier and a murderer. That difference is following the rules. Elder Thane studied the humans carefully. Today, during the pirate attack, I watched your Marines fight. They were very efficient, very deadly. But they also stopped when enemies surrendered. They treated wounded prisoners. They used only the force necessary. This was following your rules? Yes, sir, Taeyang said. What happens if you don't follow the rules? Captain Hyun answered this time. Court-martial. Prison. Dishonorable discharge. For serious war crimes, execution in some jurisdictions. We take violations very seriously. Because you know what happens when the rules are broken, Thane said slowly. You've seen it. Many times, Hyun said sadly. That's why we enforce them strictly. The conference room was quiet again, but it was a different kind of silence. The aliens were thinking, processing. Voss stood and approached Taeyang. I called you primitive earlier. I was wrong. You're not primitive. You're... Voss struggled to find the word. You're controlled. You have this capacity for violence inside you. But you've built cages around it. Rules. Laws. Morality. We have to, Taeyang said. Without those cages, we'd destroy ourselves. An elderly Quellan scholar raised her hand. I have a question that troubles me. These rules of yours, they are self-imposed. Your species agreed to limit itself. But what if you choose not to? What if humanity decides the rules no longer apply? The humans looked at each other. It was Ambassador Park who answered, That's the question that keeps me awake at night, she said honestly. The rules only work if we choose to follow them. There's no galactic police that can force us. It's entirely dependent on human will. That's terrifying, the scholar said. Yes, Park agreed. It is. That's why we teach our children about the wars, about the atrocities, about what happens when the rules are abandoned. We make sure every generation understands the cost. Dr. Yoon pulled up images of human history. Ruins of cities. Memorials. Mass graves. These are our reminders. We build monuments to our mistakes. We preserve the evidence of our worst moments. Not because we're proud of them, but because we never want to forget. Elder Thane stood slowly, his forearms spread wide. I begin to understand. You are a species that has looked into the abyss of your own nature and chosen to step back from it. Elder Thane. For Thane. Scenes take for Thane. R. Every day, Counselor Ahn said. That's the key. It's not a one-time choice. Every human, every day, chooses to follow the rules, chooses to be better than our worst impulses. But sometimes you fail, Dren said. You admitted there are still war crimes, still violations. Sometimes we fail. Lieutenant Bonhua agreed. We're not perfect, but we try. And when someone breaks the rules, we hold them accountable. A message came through on the main display. It was from Galactic Council headquarters. Elder Thane read it, his expression growing concerned. The Council has been informed of today's events, he said. There is significant alarm about human military capability. Several member species are calling for restrictions on human weapons and training. Some are suggesting humanity should be quarantined from the general council population. You're afraid of us, Captain Hyun said flatly. Can you blame us? Thane asked. We have just learned that the newest council member is the most dangerous species in the galaxy. You have knowledge and skills we thought were extinct. You train for violence, while we train for cooperation. Ambassador Park stood. We saved this ship today. Our Marines protected your people. We know. And we are grateful. But we are also terrified. Thane looked around the room at all the alien faces. For 3,000 years, the galaxy has been at peace because everyone agreed violence was wrong. Now we have a species that says violence can be right, under the correct circumstances, following the proper rules. Violence is never right, Taeyang said. But sometimes it's necessary. That's what you don't understand yet. Help us understand, Thane said. Because right now, many in the council want to expel humanity before you corrupt our peaceful civilization. Before anyone could respond, a priority alert flashed on every screen in the room. Ensign Baek Isul, the communications officer, burst into the conference room. Captain, Ambassador, we've intercepted coded pirate communications. The attack today wasn't random. Explain, Hyun ordered. Isul pulled up a star chart. It showed the edge of council space. Dozens of red markers appeared, each one representing a ship. It was a probe. They were testing council defenses. And they found us completely vulnerable. The red markers moved on the chart, converging toward council core worlds. That's not possible, Dren said. That's over 200 ships. 217, Isul confirmed. They're organizing. And they're coming. Elder Thane sat down heavily. The council has no military. We have police, inspectors, scientists. But no one trained for combat. No weapons. No defense fleet. He looked at the humans. The terrifying, violent, rule-following humans. We need your help. The council chamber on the capital world of Primaris was designed for peaceful debate. Soft lighting, comfortable seating, acoustic design meant to encourage calm discussion. It had never been built to handle panic. But panic was exactly what filled it now. Delegates from 17 species argued, shouted, and pleaded. Display screens showed the approaching pirate fleet. 217 ships, moving toward council space. The largest organized military force the galaxy had seen in 3,000 years. Ambassador Park Mireille stood in the human delegation area, watching the chaos. Next to her was Admiral Song Woo-jin, who had arrived from Earth as soon as the crisis began. The admiral was a tall man with gray hair and a face that had seen too many battles. They have no idea what to do, he said quietly. Can you blame them? Park asked. They've forgotten how to fight. They've forgotten that sometimes peace isn't a choice someone gives you. On the main floor, a Velkir delegate was speaking. We must negotiate with these pirates. Offer them resources, territory, whatever they want. Violence cannot be the answer. They already tried negotiating, Admiral Song muttered. The pirates killed the envoy and broadcast the execution. Elder Thane stood at the center podium, trying to maintain order. Please. We must remain calm. Our traditions of peace have served us for millennia. We cannot abandon them in panic. Our traditions assumed everyone wanted peace. Another voice called out. These pirates don't want peace. They want conquest. A Quellan security officer brought up a report. Our analysis suggests the pirate fleet consists of exiled members from various council species. Criminals, outcasts, those who rejected our peaceful society. Then they're our responsibility, Thane said. We should have helped them integrate instead of exiling them. They chose exile, the officer corrected. They chose violence over cooperation, and now they're returning with an army. In the research section of the chamber, Archivist Keln was presenting findings about human history. The small, six-eyed being pulled up image after image on the displays. Wars, weapons, destruction on scales the Council couldn't imagine. This is what humans call World War II, Keln said, showing footage from Earth's archives. Approximately 80 million dead. Entire continents engulfed in combat. Cities reduced to ruins. The Council delegates watched in horror. The images showed human soldiers fighting through streets, bombs falling from aircraft, ships burning in oceans. The scope of destruction was incomprehensible to beings who had never experienced war. And this was just one war, Keln continued. Humans had another similar conflict, called World War I, just decades earlier. And before that, thousands of smaller wars throughout their history. How did they survive? A delegate asked. They didn't, Keln said grimly. Not all of them, but enough survived to rebuild, to try again, to make the same mistakes in new ways. Dr. Yoon Ha-jin stood up from the human section. If I may add context, those wars taught us important lessons. After World War II, humanity created international laws. We built organizations designed to prevent such conflicts. But you still have wars, Keln pointed out. Smaller ones, more controlled. We're learning. A Velkir elder stood, trembling with emotion. You speak of learning, of controlling violence, but you're still violent. You still maintain armed forces. You still train for killing. Admiral Song stepped forward. Captain Hyun had authorized him to speak on behalf of all human military forces. Yes, we do. Because we remember what happens when peaceful people face violent ones. The peaceful people die. The chamber erupted in argument again. Some delegates agreed humanity should help defend the Council. Others insisted that accepting military aid from humans would corrupt their peaceful culture. Still, others suggested surrender might be the best option. Surrender? Lieutenant Choi Bonhwa's voice cut through the noise. She had been granted permission to attend as a witness. You think surrendering to pirates will save you? Perhaps they will be satisfied with tributes, a delegate suggested. They won't, Bonhwa said flatly. Pirates don't want tribute. They want everything. And once you give them something, they'll come back for more. You don't know that. History knows it. Every peaceful civilization that ever surrendered to violent raiders got destroyed. Not immediately. Gradually. Until there was nothing left. Counselor An Sulgi provided psychological analysis. The Council species have no cultural memory of warfare. You've bred the instinct out of yourselves through thousands of years of peace. It's actually remarkable. But it also leaves you vulnerable. Vulnerable to what? Elder Thane asked. To becoming like you? To embracing violence? No, An said. Vulnerable to those who never forgot violence. Like these pirates. Ensign Baek Isul updated the tactical display. The pirate fleet had split into multiple groups. They were heading toward different council worlds simultaneously. They're not just raiding, Admiral Song analyzed. They're conquering. Look at the pattern. They're targeting industrial centers and population hubs. This is an invasion. We have no military to resist them, Thane said. Our police forces number in the thousands. We have no warships, no weapons designed for combat. We're completely defenseless. You have us, Admiral Song said. The chamber went quiet. All eyes turned. to the human delegation. Earth can mobilize a defense fleet within days, the Admiral continued. We have ships designed for combat. Marines trained for boarding actions. Pilots who know how to fight in space. We can help you. At what cost? A Velkir delegate demanded. You'll save us from pirates only to conquer us yourselves? Ambassador Park felt her temper rise. We've been part of the Council for 5 years. In that time, have we shown any aggressive intent? Have we threatened anyone? We've followed every rule, respected every treaty, and adapted to your culture. Because you were few, the delegate said. But if we give you military authority, if we make you our defenders, you'll have power over us. We already have power over you, Admiral Song said bluntly. We have weapons you can't match, training you don't understand, experience you've never needed. We could have demanded anything from the Council years ago, but we didn't. We asked to join as equals. This is different. You're right. It is different, because now, you need us. A message came through from the outer systems. Pirates had attacked a mining colony. Hundreds dead. The survivors were begging for help. Elder Thane closed his eyes in pain. We need time to debate this properly, to consider all options, to find a peaceful solution. You don't have time, Admiral Song said. The fleet will be in Council core space within 3 days. You need to decide now. End quote. We can't just abandon 3,000 years of peace. You're not abandoning it, Corporal Taeyang said. Everyone turned to look at the young Marine. You're protecting it. Peace isn't just the absence of war. It's something you have to defend. With violence? Thane asked. If necessary, yes. Another message arrived. 2 more colonies attacked. The pirates were moving faster than expected. A Quellan elder named Matron Scylla stood. She was over 200 years old, one of the most respected voices in the Council. I have lived my entire life in peace. I have never seen violence until these recent days. But I have been studying human history, and I believe I understand something important. 2. The chamber quieted to hear her. Humans are dangerous, Scylla said. That much is clear. They have capacity for terrible violence. But they also have something we lack. They have experience with evil. They know what it looks like. They know how to fight it. We should not need to fight evil, a delegate protested. But evil is here anyway, Scylla said. It doesn't care about our philosophy. It doesn't care about our peaceful traditions. It simply takes what it wants. She turned to Ambassador Park. You spoke before about your rules of war, about limits on violence. I want to understand this better. If we allow human forces to defend us, can you guarantee they will follow these rules? Park looked at Admiral Song. The Admiral nodded. Every human soldier and Marine takes an oath to follow the laws of war. We have military police who enforce these rules. We have courts that prosecute violations. I can guarantee we will follow our own standards, but those standards allow killing, Thane pointed out. Controlled killing, Admiral Song corrected. Against military targets, with rules about when and how. It's not the same as murder. Lote. It still seems like a horrible compromise. It is, the Admiral agreed. War is always horrible. But it's less horrible with rules than without them. Private Lee Jiwoo spoke up. My grandmother used to say that peace is what you have when good people are strong enough to protect it. We're offering to be strong for you, just until you can defend yourselves. And what if you decide not to give that power back? A delegate asked. Ambassador Park pulled up a document on the main display. We've prepared a treaty. It limits human military authority in Council space. It requires oversight by Council observers. It includes sunset clauses and strict rules of engagement. It gives you control while using our expertise. Archivist Kelm studied the treaty carefully. This is very detailed. You've thought about how to limit your own power. We've learned to be cautious with power, Park said. History taught us what happens when military force has no limits. The debate continued for hours. Messages kept arriving from attacked colonies. The death toll kept rising. Finally, Elder Thane called for a vote. All in favor of accepting human military assistance under the terms of the proposed treaty? The vote was close. "The measure passes," Thane said quietly. "May the ancestors forgive us if this is a mistake." Admiral Song activated his communication link. "This is Admiral Song to Earth Command. Authorization granted. Begin fleet deployment to Council space." On screens throughout the chamber, humans watched ships begin launching from Earth orbit. Sleek warships, designed for combat. Carriers, loaded with fighters. Support vessels with supplies and ammunition. The Galactic Council was about to learn what human military power really meant. The colony world of Haven's Reach was home to 3 million beings from a dozen different council species. It had parks and universities and art galleries. It had never known violence until the pirate fleet arrived. Corporal Kim Taeyang watched from the transport ship as Haven's Reach grew larger in the viewport. Smoke rose from the capital city. Fires burned in the agricultural districts. The pirates had been bombarding the planet for 6 hours. 2 minutes to drop, Lieutenant Choi Bonhua announced. "Check your gear." Taeyang's Marine unit was part of the first wave. Their mission was to secure the spaceport and protect civilians, while the main human fleet engaged the pirate ships in orbit. He checked his rifle, his ammunition, his armor seals. Everything was ready. Next to him, Private Lee Ji-woo looked nervous, but focused. "You think the aliens will understand why we have to do this?" They will when it's over," Taeyang said. "That's all that matters." The transport shook as it entered the atmosphere. Taeyang could see Council police trying to maintain order on the ground. But they were overwhelmed. They had stun weapons meant for controlling riots, not fighting an invasion. Admiral Song's voice came through the command channel. "All units, listen up. The rules of engagement are strict. You are authorized to use lethal force against armed combatants only. Verify your targets. Protect civilians. No exceptions." The transport landed hard. The rear ramp dropped. Taeyang and his squad rushed out into chaos. The spaceport was a war zone. Pirates had seized half the landing pads. They were loading stolen cargo onto their ships, while civilians ran in panic. Council police were pinned down behind cover, unable to fight back effectively. "Third squad, on me," Bonhua ordered. "Clear the east terminal. Protect the civilians trapped inside." Taeyang's team moved with practiced efficiency. They had trained for urban combat on Earth. This was similar enough. They advanced in pairs, covering each other, checking corners, maintaining communication. A group of pirates saw them and opened fire. Crude plasma weapons scorched the ground near Taeyang's position. He returned fire. 3 controlled bursts. 2 pirates went down. The others retreated. "Civilians in the terminal," Jiwoo called out. "At least 200. They're trapped." Taeyang could see them through the terminal windows. Aliens huddled together, terrified. Some were injured. All of them looked at the approaching Marines, with a mixture of hope and fear. "We need to get them out," Taeyang said. But between his position and the terminal were a dozen pirates who had set up a defensive position. They were using the civilians as shields. Knowing the humans wouldn't fire into a crowd, Technician Voss was among the trapped civilians. The Valkyr engineer had been on Haven's Reach for a scientific conference. Now, Voss watched through the window as human Marines approached. "They're going to get themselves killed," another Valkyr whispered. "They should retreat. Save themselves." "No," Voss said quietly. "They won't retreat. That's not what humans do." Lieutenant Bonhua assessed the situation. A frontal assault would risk civilian casualties, but waiting would give the pirates time to hurt hostages. She needed another option. "Taeyang, can you get to the roof?" "Yes, ma'am." "Do it. Get above them. We'll provide distraction." Taeyang and 2 other Marines found a service ladder. They climbed, while the rest of the squad drew the pirates' attention with suppressing fire. It took 3 minutes to reach the roof access. From above, Tae-young could see the pirate positions clearly. He activated his targeting system, marking each hostile, 13 enemies, 2 hostages being held at gunpoint. The rest of the civilians pressed against the far wall. "I have shots," he reported. "Are you sure? That's a lot of targets to engage simultaneously." "I'm sure." "Then you're cleared." "On your mark." Tae-young took a breath. This was what he had trained for. Not just shooting, but making the right decision under pressure. Protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. "Execute in 3, 2, 1, now." He fired. 13 shots in rapid succession. Each one carefully aimed. Each one hitting exactly where intended. The other 2 Marines with him took out the remaining targets. 13 seconds. 13 pirates down. 0 civilian casualties. The hostages stared in shock. Bonhua's team rushed in, securing the area and evacuating the civilians. Medical teams from the human ships were already landing, setting up triage stations. Voss approached Tae-young as the corporal descended from the roof. The Valkyr's large eyes studied the human. "You could have killed the hostages," Voss said. "If you had missed. If you had made a mistake." "I didn't miss. But you could have. You risked it." "I risked my shot," Tae-young said. "Not them. If I wasn't sure I could make the shot, I wouldn't have taken it. That's what the training is for. To know the difference. In orbit." The battle was going very differently than the pirates expected. They had numbers, but the human fleet had tactics. Admiral Song commanded from the flagship, directing his ships with precision. Captain Hyun Dae-ho watched from the bridge of the Unity. The human warships moved in coordinated patterns, targeting pirate vessels with frightening accuracy. But they were also careful. When a pirate ship lost power, the humans disabled it, rather than destroying it. "They're taking prisoners?" Navigator Dren asked in disbelief. "Of course," Hyun said. "Why waste lives when you can capture them? But they're enemies. Why show mercy? Because they're beaten. Because killing them serves no purpose now. Because the rules say you don't kill people who surrender." The pirate fleet began to break apart. Some ships fled. Others surrendered. A few fought to the death, but most chose to live. Within 8 hours, the battle was over. The human fleet took 217 pirate ships. Some were destroyed in the fighting. Most were captured intact. Thousands of pirates were now prisoners, held on human military vessels. Elder Thane arrived on Haven's Reach 2 days later. The colony was recovering. Human Marines were helping clear debris and restore order. Medical teams were treating wounded aliens. Engineers were repairing damaged infrastructure. He found Corporal Tae-young at a checkpoint, directing civilian traffic. The young Marine looked tired but alert. "Corporal Kim," Thane said. "May I speak with you?" "Of course, sir." They walked through the recovering spaceport. Council workers were already rebuilding. The scars of battle were visible, but healing. "I watched the recordings of the terminal rescue," Thane said. "What you did was extraordinary." "Just following training, sir." "No. It was more than that. You made a choice. A difficult choice. You risked taking those shots, because not taking them meant the hostages might die. You chose to trust your skill rather than play it safe." Tae-young stopped walking. "That's what soldiers do, sir. We make hard choices so others don't have to." "I'm beginning to understand that," Thane said. "Dr. Yoon explained something to me. He said, humans aren't violent because they lack control. You're violent because you choose when and how to apply force. You have rules not to limit violence, but to guide it." "That's right. We were wrong about you," Thane admitted. "We thought violence was primitive. We thought peace meant never fighting. But you've shown us that sometimes peace requires fighting, and that fighting with rules is very different from fighting without them." They reached the main plaza where civilians had gathered. Aliens were talking with human soldiers, asking questions, expressing gratitude. Voss was there, explaining to other Velkir how the Marines had saved them. What happens now? Taeyang asked. The council has made a decision, Thane said. We want human military trainers. We want to learn how to defend ourselves. Not to become violent like you, but to understand violence well enough to prevent it. That's wise. Admiral Song has agreed to establish a training program. You'll be one of the instructors. Taeyang looked surprised. Me? I'm just a corporal. You're a teacher, Thane corrected. You've been teaching us since the moment we met you. Teaching us what real strength means. What real courage looks like. What it means to fight with honor. Ambassador Park joined them in the plaza. She had been coordinating relief efforts with council officials. Elder Thane, the council has requested a formal ceremony. They want to thank the human forces publicly. It's not necessary, Taeyang said. It is to us, Thane replied. You saved millions of lives. You protected our people when we couldn't protect ourselves. That deserves recognition. The ceremony was held 3 days later. Representatives from all 17 council species attended. Admiral Song stood at attention while Elder Thane presented him with a medal, a new creation called the Defender of Peace. But it was Corporal Taeyang's speech that everyone remembered. He stood before the assembled aliens, still uncomfortable with the attention. I'm not good at speeches, he began. But I want you to understand something. We didn't fight because we like violence. We fought because peace is worth defending. The crowd was silent. You're afraid of us. Taeyang continued. I get it. We're dangerous. We know how to kill. But that's not what makes us human. What makes us human is choosing not to kill when we could. Following rules when it would be easier not to. Showing mercy when we've won. He looked at Voss in the crowd. At Dren. At all the aliens who had questioned and feared humanity. You asked me about war crimes. About why we need rules for violence. Here's the answer. We need rules because without them, we become monsters. The rules don't make us weak. They make us human. They remind us what we're fighting for. Private Li Jiwoo stood next to the other Marines, tears in her eyes. This was what her grandmother had tried to explain. This was why the rules mattered. We're going to teach you how to fight, Taeyang said. But more importantly, we're going to teach you when to fight. And when not to. Because that's the real skill. Not the violence itself, but knowing when violence is the answer, and when it isn't. The ceremony ended with both human and alien forces standing together. Council species who had never held weapons now trained alongside human instructors. They learned tactics and strategy and rules of engagement. But mostly, they learned what Taeyang had tried to teach from the beginning. That strength without morality is just brutality. That violence without rules is just murder. And that true courage is having the power to destroy but choosing to protect instead. 6 months later, the first Council Defense Force graduated. They wore uniforms that combined human military design with Council symbols. They carried weapons but knew the laws that governed their use. They were ready to defend their civilization. Corporal Taeyang watched them march in formation. Beside him stood Technician Voss, now Security Officer Voss, wearing a new uniform. Do you think we can do it? Voss asked. Can we be warriors and remain peaceful? You already are, Taeyang said. Being a warrior doesn't mean loving violence. It means being willing to face violence, to protect others. Is that what humans are? Warriors? Taeyang thought about his grandmother's stories. About the wars humanity had fought. About the mistakes they had made and the lessons they had learned. About the rules they had created to remind themselves of their humanity. We're humans, he said finally. We're dangerous and protective, violent and compassionate. We're capable of terrible things, but we choose to do better. That's all anyone can ask. Voss nodded. Then we'll try to be like that too. And in the galaxy where peace had reigned for 3,000 years, a new understanding emerged. Peace wasn't just the absence of war. It was something you built, something you defended, something you chose every day. And sometimes, choosing peace meant being ready for war.